First of all, I think I need to open by stating that I am not a qualified electrician. I am not a professional electrical engineer, and I do these jobs purely because the value of the product is so low that even if I fail, there's no loss. So I shall go ahead and try and repair this hedge trimmer, which doesn't seem to be working. If I plug it in, which of course you can't see, and switch it on, there is the safety switch at the front and the trigger below, but of course nothing happens. If I don't press the safety switch, it stops the trigger from engaging. So safety switch, trigger, and yes, the power is on. So let's switch it off, unplug it, and we'll open her up and try and determine what's wrong. So starting with the absolute basics, let's take the safety shield off. Now this main body is in two halves, held together by a series of screws, but before I can separate it, I need to take this guard off, and that itself is held by two screws. So let's take those off. There we go, that's the guard off. The guard is actually damaged. It would be quite simple to bond it back together, but that's not important right now. Pointless if it doesn't work. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws to separate the two halves. Now I want to do this reasonably carefully, because when I pull this off there will be nothing supporting the two levers. And they may suddenly spring out of place. They're under spring tension, so I'm expecting springs to come flying out. Okay, 10 screws undone. Let's try and separate this. And there we go. This exposes the trigger button, the safety switch and trigger handle, the main motor, and the oscillator, which oscillates the blades back and forward. Obviously this had a lot of grease applied to it from the factory, which all still seems to be good. So what I want to do is a continuity check to see if the live power coming in from the plug is actually reaching these contacts here, and then to check if the power is then reaching from these contacts here into the switch itself, and then check if the power, when the switch is engaged, is then reaching the motor. And we can do that with a very simple continuity check with a multimeter. Right, let's do a continuity check now. Get these over here. Switch the multimeter to resistance. Switch it to about 20 kilovolt ohms. As you may see, it's now showing as an open circuit. Touch it together, closed circuit, 0 reading. So that's what we're hoping to get from where the brown wire goes in here to the power here. There you go, 0, 0, 0. That's perfect. Oh, that's not perfect. That's interesting. Okay, we do seem to have a problem. For some reason, power is getting to there, but power is not getting to there. So it looks like we've got a discontinuity between this terminal and this terminal, which suggests somewhere throughout this wiring, or even within the plug itself, that the power has become disconnected. I'll take that fuse out and I'll check the actual contact on the inside. A little screwdriver just to lever out the fuse. Oh, out she comes. And while we've got the fuse out, we might as well check that at the same time. Oh, come on, sit up there. Between the two ends of the fuse, click, click. And I don't know if you can see that in the camera view, but it is actually continuity through the fuse. So the fuse is good. Let's pop the fuse back in there. And again, between here and here, 0 resistance. Between in here, resistance. Between here and here, resistance. Well, it would seem to me as if there is a problem with this cabling. What I can do is I can take this wiring out and we'll check it directly with the end of the wire and see if the power's getting through there. So we'll release this clamp first of all. Pull the cable out. We should be able to get this connecting block out of here as well. There we go. I need to be able to undo that little screw so I can check if the problem is indeed with this wiring. And I can also go over the entire cable and see if there's any damage on the cable that would suggest that the power has been interfered with. These plugs unfortunately are sealed units, so it's not possible to open the plug up to see if there's a problem within. The only alternative really is to cut that plug off and replace it. I'm putting my hand in the grease here. The only alternative is to cut the plug off and put a replacement plug on there, and I do have 3-pin plugs that I can put on in place of that. So I think that may be what I'll do, but let's disconnect this first. Oops, a daisy. That wasn't in very tight. I mean, it shouldn't really matter that much. That's interesting. Now that is just ordinary copper wire. Now normally from the factory they put little caps on the end of these to make them easier to slide in and connect up rather than wires. So I wonder if this has been messed about with before. Although I must admit everything else about it does look factory, so maybe it was just a cheap shoddy job. Okay, I had to go all the way along the wire. I was virtually at the end when I found we have a split. So clearly that's where our fault is. I didn't need to open up the unit at all. The fault is not within inside the unit at all. I can put all this back together because we now know that the fault is just here. Now, given how close it is, just over a foot of length away from the end, probably the easiest way to do this is going to be cut this piece of cable off completely and reattach it to a new end. It will make the cable slightly shorter, but it will fix the problem. I'm going to slide the protective rubber all the way along to beyond the brake, and then we'll cut that off and trim the wires back, make the new connections, put it all back together. That'll be nice and easy, won't it? It's at this point I'd like to have a little word about polarity. Now you can see I've stripped back the outer cable and then just simply stripped back the inner cables. I've twisted the end of the wires and it's all ready to put together. But then comes the question, which way does it plug in? Now there's a few points to be made here. If this was a direct current system, then polarity would be very, very important. The plus needs to go to the plus and the minus needs to go to the minus. But this is an alternating current system. So therefore, plus and minus swap over. So you could argue that it doesn't matter which way round these wires get connected, because they will go to the motor, they will drive the motor, and the motor will drive the cutting blades, which is just an oscillating back and forward motion. However, which way you connect these up can determine which way round the motor drives. It may go clockwise or it may go anti-clockwise. Now again, that may not matter because we're only talking about a back and forwards motion anyway. But the motor also drives a cooling fan. And the cooling fan helps to keep the motor cool while it's running. And the blades on the cooling fan are designed to work in a certain direction. If you reverse them, the cooling flow is not as efficient and there is a possibility that the motor will overheat and burn out. So coming back to our polarity, it is important that we get the connections right because we need the cooling fan to go in the right direction. Now I did take note that the brown wire connected to the white and the blue wire connected to the yellow. I get those the right way around, the motor should go in the right direction and we should have the correct direction of rotation. Unfortunately, I won't know because I can't actually run this until I put the outer housing back on. Because the outer housing holds the whole thing together, stops it shaking apart while it's working. And with the housing on, I can't actually see which way the motor's going. The only real check I can do is go back and look over this video and see which way it was wired up. I am pretty sure I've got it the right way round, but I won't be absolutely sure until I check the video, and unfortunately by that time the job will actually be completed. Of course I can open it back up and rewire it back the correct way. I'm pretty sure I've got it right. Somewhat ironically, this is an opportunity where you, the viewers, will actually have a better view of this than I do. Oh, let's tighten up the screws. Tappity tappity tap. Make sure they're nice and tight. Make sure it's screwed down onto the copper and not onto the plastic covering. Push that back into place. Place the wire into its correct location. Stick on the bridge piece or the cable clamp. Now just in case you didn't know, but you probably do, this is a safety clamp that holds the cable tight and stops it getting pulled out so it doesn't pull these connections apart. What I should have done, and I think I will do actually, is I should have allowed some slack in these just in case there is a slight movement, you want a little bit of an opportunity for it not to pull out of place. So now you can see there's a little bit of slack in these cables, just in case it does pull out slightly. Just make sure they're tight. Make sure that's secure. Put the rubber into place. A little bit of a bugger to do. There we go, that's it, in place. Okay, the next thing I've got to do is put it all back together. Now fortunately these handles haven't come out of place, everything's still sat as it should be. Just while we're in here, just to demonstrate, when you pull the trigger, nothing happens. Oh, that did come out of place slightly there. When you pull the safety, it lifts that little contact up, so that then when you pull the trigger, it activates that switch. Why is that not working? Why is that not working? Better. Safety, and activates the switch. That will work all properly once the top cover's back in place, and this is what I was talking about. I need to have the top cover in place because it holds everything securely, holds the motor in place, stops everything coming out like the handles, etc. But of course, once I've got that top cover in place, I won't be able to see this fan and which way that fan is going. Last thing to go on, the shield. Check the triggers work. Safety lock. And you can hear the switch clicking away there. Excellent. Right, clear the table. Plug it in. Power on. Lift it off the table a bit. And there you go. Working again. Sorted. Another problem solved.